Hello and welcome to this 731 subscribers special. Welcome to my kitchen. And you know what? I don't even really intend to be cooking anything today, though hold on a second. And if you wonder what this video is about, it's going to be about what the title says. It's going to be about books, revolution, or public protest, and my hate towards lawns. Also, right after this cocktail, we're gonna be making seed bombs. Yeah, that's good. Let's start with a question. What exactly is a lawn? From the 16th century and especially in the 18th century in France, lawns were very popular among aristocracy. French lawns would incorporate really complicated designs, combining grass together with pathways, flowers, and trees. In a sense, French gardens were similar to the Japanese gardens, except with less concentration on the process and more concentration on the end result. So British aristocracy, of course, followed the trend, and combined with northern climates of British islands and grass that was growing there and livestock that was available to aristocracy, we saw an uprising of the lawn, or first thing that would resemble the lawn that we know today. As I compared French gardens towards Japanese gardens, British lawns would be compared to something like a golf course that you can see today. Big amount of green grass and very small patches of wilderness. But in both cases, the lawn was not as green or monotone or as full of dog poop as we know it today. Lawns of the 18th century would actually be closer to the short grass meadows. Gardeners and architects would be working on removing unwanted plants from these lawns. So the lawns would have something like short-growing flowers and short-growing grass, but would exclude bushes, trees, stones, tall grasses, and other things that would be deemed inconvenient. But lawns as we know them today are a monoculture. This is one sort of grass, and if you're located in North America, this is often an invasive grass. So if you would ever decide to make seed bombs on your own, it's basically 3 parts clay to 5 parts soil. Classic seed bombs also have flower seeds, so of course it's important that you use native and non-invasive flowers and native to your area. Don't just go online and buy whichever seeds, because sometimes they say that they are native, but they're actually native to like California or wherever they're grown. But let us return to the lawns. A lot of North American climates, especially in America, do not really favor growing of the grass. But nonetheless, lawns were a status symbol, and rich Americans wanted to be part of that story too. Americans didn't just elevate European history of lawns and growing vast green spaces. Americans also elevated use of slave force to pull the weeds and to trim the bushes. No ancestral status is required as far as you can buy yourself a bunch of slaves. This is what I call freedom. But nothing was as revolutionary in history of lawns as coming of the suburbia. Frederick and John Olmsted were responsible for the building of the first suburbia in North America and largely shaped how we see suburbia right now.
Families also come to the suburbs because it's going to be cheaper than living in town, or they think it will be when they first sign the papers. Monthly payments are often less than the rent you'd pay for this much floor space in town. Add low down payments, 30 years to pay for a brand new house. Who can resist?
Olmsted and his father were first to bring this piece of luxury of a green lawn to regular Americans. Notably, of course, white Americans. Because as you might know, through redlining and through exclusionary laws, Americans of color and those deemed lesser were not really able to buy a piece of paradise of their own. Which slowly brings us to the part 2 of this very poorly structured video, which I guess is called Race, Class, and Lawn. I guess it is fair to say that all of you guys live somewhere on this planet. Though if you are not, then of course contact me please, as I'm ready to depart from this ball on fire. But nonetheless, you might notice how different is the landscape of your city depending on which area you're in. If you are in downtown, you can be faced with really high peeper tree proportions. If you are in industrial area, it probably looks like post-apocalypse even on best of days. Or if you are visiting suburban areas, then of course you might see the endless fields of green grass with no signs of humans. Our landscaping is really intertwined with what the areas are used for and who is occupying those areas. Let me mix my mix really well, and it's gonna sound like some not really good ASMR, I guess. Lawns, as we understand them, are not really just a space or a flat greenland or a wild monoculture field. They are actually a status symbol too. Lawn is always a question of who can afford enough space and time to take care of the lawn, and who can afford this place like a house with the lawn in the first place. People of the working class and people of color were largely excluded from this grass frenzy. So another issue that is originated in the type of suburban architecture generated in Northern America is that there are food deserts. Food deserts most often affect people in colored or, again, poorer neighborhoods. People of color and people of lower socioeconomic status often live in the areas with food deserts. And these areas also happen to be policed more often, which means that if these people try to use their land, be it guerrilla gardening or gardening in their own front yards, they are often fined or put into prison. Because what can be scarier to an average NIMBY than a bunch of black people trying to turn their lawn into something actually functional? And of course, there is research on how the struggle of people is intertwined with landscaping, but if you ask me, not enough. So you can expect a bunch of similar videos through summer, I guess, as I move more towards my community garden and less towards eating candy under blanket because it's so cold outside. So let me present a hierarchy of lawns according to myself. First is mansions. Mansions are characterized by very tasteless and large amounts of greenery and large amounts of lawns. For second is McMansions, and McMansions are even more tasteless, have less greenery and more lawns. Third is a rich man's house, which is a very new type of architecture. Sometimes people are aware that the lawns are bad, and they have a lot of money, which means that they are able to create a space which is lushy, green, and often made by the architects. In a sense, these people can afford to get rid of the lawn and build something that has even more status than the lawn itself. Then, of course, number 4, you have a boomer house. A boomer house is characterized by vast amounts of lushy green lawn. Husband in this household often likes the lawnmower more than their own wife, so they take care of this vast amounts of greenery. And then you have liberal suburban house, which of course has a lawn, maybe 2 CVs in the driveway. These people know that the lawn harms the environment, they have money to change it, but don't really want to. After that, we have a just general suburban house, the household where husband still takes care of a lawn, but doesn't really like it, so the lawn looks quite shitty. There might be some couple of flower pots which are dying in the front yard. After that, at number 8, we have an immigrant mom or an old hippie couple. This household often have a lot of flower pots and minimal abundant lawn in their own front yards. You can also encounter vegetables tucked into random containers which are not even flower pots. At number 9, we have communal lawn, or lawns which are built in townhouses or communal housing type of construction. These lawns are often abandoned and subcontracted to the landscaping organization. People who live in that households really don't often like the lawn that surrounds them, but they don't really intend or have any capacity to change it. And at number 10, we have a bad neighborhood lawn, where a bad neighborhood lawn is just not really maintained. It is a patchy or overgrown lawn. These people often have disputes with their neighbors, especially if their neighbors are coming from higher status categories. Pretty much homes where people that live in them can't afford time or money to change their lawn for the better. Oh, I guess we are fully hydrated and ready to roll over here. And I'm actually going to make 2 types of seed bombs today. One being the more traditional seed bombs with wildflowers, and the second one being food seed bombs. So the thing is, with the food seed bombs, you want to make sure that you are using species that cannot become invasive. In my case, I'm using squash and pumpkin, which I collected from my previous year of gardening. And you can see, I think, my last pumpkin in the video that I made closer to the new year. And I also use sunflower. Sunflower is very visible, and it will give me a note to see if these bombs actually grew out. Now, I did talk about this briefly, but there is actually a new development in how we view the hierarchy of a lawn. So as more people become aware of the lawn being bad for environment, people that get stuck with lawns often are the same people that are stuck with carpeted living rooms, basically people who can't afford to get rid of the lawn. Once again, people of lower socioeconomic status are getting excluded from the landscaping trends. And of course, as a side effect of this hierarchy, we can now see a lot of landscaping type of videos online. And one of the most popular types of a landscaping video is the one where people are working for free on an overgrown or uncontrolled lawn of a neighbor. This is very popular, of course, because it is very satisfying in the best way the internet video can be. But there is a second reason of this type of popularity that the videos are gaining. Specifically, that the person who is getting their lawn done is lifting up several layers on the hierarchy of their front lawn. But my problem with the lawns is not just how they're intertwined with race and social status. Because no matter how good your lawn is looking or where your lawn is located, there is often a problem. Problem being is that lawns, as a wasteful space, actually are not really even used. And of course, there are several exceptions to that. And if you have, for example, playfield is a usable space. So is the picnic area in the park. And so are children playgrounds or even your own backyard when children are playing in it, or somebody is actively engaging with the lawn as the environment. But in most of the cases, lawn is unusable, be it your front yard, be it your backyard if you don't really engage with it, be it little patches of grass in the parking lots, or formal lawns near like administration building. And I really hate formal spaces for that because it is like a big building, a beautiful lawn, but it screams in your face that you can't step on it. And of course, as you might know already, lawns do not really grow any food for us or any other species. They do not foster any sort of biodiversity or any animals, or they're not good for anything in the environment other than being a flat green space. It is quite literally an invasive monoculture that struggles to grow on its own because of its over-trimming and over-drying, but also prevents any other forms of biodiversity from developing. So all this, I guess, is segueing us into the part 3 of this video, which also means that I need to be rolling these bombs a little faster.
One eternity later.
Part 3 is called Public Spaces, Revolution, and Reading. Since the landscaping is weaved into design of our cities and how we live our lives, I bet you can come up with a couple of examples in your own neighborhood or surrounding areas where lawns are existing but are non-usable space. Those are not just patches of lawns. They also abandoned parking lots or abandoned malls or abandoned empty lots and just this weird like empty space between different malls. These spaces are often owned publicly or privately, but are acting as public spaces, but unused public spaces. These are the types of the environment that are hostile to people, hostile to animals, and hostile to plants. And really, if somebody asks me how did we end up at this point, I don't know, because who would ever think that combining a lot of parking lot and asphalt with little patches of greenery will result in any form of good? So of course, in modern landscaping and modern sustainable community building, there is a term of active community or activated space. Activated space is basically a place where people come together to build something, to entertain. And so how does the unused space turn into active space? There are, of course, whole bodies of research and channels and architects who are dedicated their time to building active spaces and showing how they can be built. But the basics are that you need something for people to engage with. You also need this place to be safe, like safe from cars or safe from extreme weather. Best way to activate the space is often through the community engagement. If communities are not built bottom up, they result in the same mistakes and the same problems that we face with lawns. Basically a space that is unusable because it is not meant for the people who live in it. I think I have a really good personal example of that where my community garden is looking very utilitarian compared to that I saw near my sister's house. Because since I live in more rural community, it is the case for me that gardening is done by more conservative older ladies. So the design of a garden, how it looks like, really incorporates the community view in this case. But nonetheless, this difference is a great representation of why you should work bottom up when building active spaces. And of course, when you are working bottom up with the spaces, if the cities and municipalities and local businesses are often incorporating their own input and their own money, which is really beneficial when you are building an active space. Again, in my case, community garden that I currently participate in, was built by people as sort of guerrilla gardening on the side of the soccer field. But lately, when the garden started to grow, city was actually really prone to incorporate this garden into the community neighborhood. And there are many forms of activating or occupying public spaces. There are, of course, forms of guerrilla gardening or guerrilla landscaping, or people putting up signs and just pretty much hanging out and sitting in different places. But there are some things and objects in general that can activate the space. They are usually including benches and tables for people to sit on and engage on. But they also include art. Art is perhaps, in my opinion, one of the best ways to activate this space for the people. But also anything nice and beautiful like plants, trees, or flowers can activate space too. So the seed bombs in themselves are not actually just only food for bees, though they can be used as such. It is also a sign that the space is nice to be in. And of course, the most important aspect of a communal and active space is people. Because if your space has no people in it, then you went wrong on some turn before it. For any space to become activated, somebody needs to be in it, which often means that somebody needs to start to occupying the spaces which are not active. And if your suburban town looks like a desert where people don't really use anything, then you need to always remember that somebody needs to start it, and that somebody might as well be you. Communities, cities, and municipalities do get engaged in community space building, but usually after there is a need for it. But also there are two other types of activities which are really non-invasive, if you wish, which I wanted to highlight in this video. One, eating, and second one, reading. These two actions are often accepted as a social norm, thus are not viewed by any organizations such as police or private owners as an infringement on their private property. Because something that you may find out really fast is that once you start occupying an unused space, somebody will show up and say that this is their property, that you can't use it, even though it's really unused for anything else. Any action of activating space often starts with infringing on somebody's private property. Reading specifically, well, according to me, is one of the greatest examples, because reading requires you to sit in quiet, in pretty much abandoned place for extended periods of time. So that makes a reader a perfect pioneer species, if you wish, of an unused space. Whenever you make your presence visible in an unused location, it gives a sign to other people to say that they can occupy this space too. If there is anything you want to take out of this video, is that somebody needs to start doing something for things to actually happen. That, of course, includes occupying spaces, but other things too, if you know what I mean. So perhaps whenever you feel like your city or your town or your neighborhood feels really empty and inhumane, you should remember that it takes first person to start, to give a signal, to activate the space, to bring more people in. And if you sit in one abandoned place long enough, you may see the space transformed. And well, after that, all you do is wait for your seed bomb to dry out, and then you find a nice spot for it, where hopefully nobody will destroy it. And that's it. And thank you for joining me today. This was one weird casual video. If you feel like subscribing to my channel, I highly suggest that you watch this other video that I will attach in here in the end about surveillance and surveillance capitalism. I'm being fun and witty in that video. I think it's worth watching, and this is more really reminiscent of the content that I'm doing on my channel rather than this. Though, of course, you can see probably more videos similar to this one in the future, at least for the summertime. Thank you for watching, and see you on the next book.